welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. House of Representatives sets committee to investigate alleged under-remittance of funds to the Federation account by the Central Bank of Nigeria. In continuation of our review of the year 2017, we beam a searchlight on the Nigerian economy and how it's fared in the outgoing year. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission releases chairman of Innocent Chukwuma, on bail as Senate condemns style arrest. And 2 killed and several others injured as Kenya's popular nightclub is hit by fire. Remember now that for more on our top stories and others, please visit our website, channelstv.com and youtube.com/channelsweb. And log on to m.channelstv.com to watch us on your mobile device, or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows devices from their respective stores. The Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have access to the Eyewitness feature, with which you can share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu, and then follow the instructions. Now let's get a bit more insight into the performance of the economy in 2017. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by a partner and tax lead for West Africa, Deloitte & Touche, and economic analyst, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you so very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So how would you describe our economic story in 2017? You've seen the ups and downs. What was it like for you?
Well, I think 2017 is a particularly tough year. But I think the good news is that we are ending on a far better note than we kicked off the year.
Yeah, indeed. It has been a tough year for many, no doubt. But let's talk about the optimism that greeted the exit of the recession. And many analysts had predicted about an 18-month cycle. Were you surprised that we exited much quicker than predicted?
Well, I would say I was surprised, but I think it's that kind of a pleasant surprise is what you will expect. And judging by the series of efforts and strategy that the federal government put in place to fight the recession, I think it's quite pleasing that we got out of it the way we did.
Yeah, which of the interventions did you see as the most impactful, shall we say, in exiting that recession? There were a number of them from the CBN as well. Which one did you, can you pinpoint?
I think the economy worked with interconnection of a number of initiatives. So it may be a disservice to say one was more instrumental than the other, but if I must just lay my hand on one, I think the effort of the Presidential Enabling Council that was set up by the federal government and headed by the Vice President himself, and a whole lot of effort that the Secretariat put in place to making sure that we do all that we can to improve the business environment and show up our revenue. I think those efforts were hugely significant. So on one side, I would say the efforts of the Secretariat working for the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, as well as a number of efforts that were directed towards shoring up our non-oil tax revenue. I think they were responsible because our major challenge was that we had huge revenue shortage.
All right, some say it's a bit difficult to celebrate the interventions and all the measures that facilitated that exit because it's been a tough year, a serious belt-tightening year for people. There's much less cash to spend than they ever have had. So how can sustainable growth trickle down to the populace, do you think?
Well, I think sustained effort is all we need. Those interventions are very well directed. I think they're very well thought through. And the fact that we got out of recession isn't by fluke. It required a lot of hard work. But I think the pessimism from people is born out of the fact that beyond the statistics, beyond the fact that we're now back on the positive growth in terms of GDP, it will take a while before the trickle-down effect spread across the country. But I can tell you that judging by the feelers and the experiences that many of the businesses share with us, it's very clear to conclude that businesses are in a much better state than they were this time last year.
All right, finally now, what would you say would be your forecast, let me say, looking at all the economic indices, including interest rate, exchange rate, inflation, GDP? What do you predict for 2018 as we move into a new year now?
Well, I think if we sustain the current effort that is ongoing, I think the movement is only up and to the right. Yeah, I see the economy get a lot better. Some of the challenges and the fear is that 2018 is the pre-election year, and there's a lot of concerns around how much concentration can the federal government still get. And but judging by what we're hearing, I think the promise is that we're going to allow politics to take a second place while we continue to focus on our own economy. So my own expectation will be if we do as much as we can to focus on the economy, because in 2017, it was practically half the year that we have in trying to replace the economy from the budget and making sure that we spend on the capital project because the budget was signed midway into the year 2017. 2018 budget is still with the National Assembly, so if we manage to get it out of the National Assembly as quickly as possible and effort at implementing the budget get started as early as possible, I think the growth that is projected in the budget for 2018, it's realizable.
All right, partner and tax lead for West Africa, Deloitte & Touche, and economic analyst, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Thanks for joining us on the News at 10 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Gloria Umezoke. Gloria.
Hello, Ijoma. The Federal Executive Council meeting continues tomorrow after over 6 hours of deliberations by members, with President Muhammadu Buhari presiding. Before the meeting was adjourned, however, the Council had approved over 38 billion naira for the construction of independent power plants for 9 universities in the country. The meeting also gave approval for the total reconstruction of the Abuja-Kano Road at the cost of about 155 billion naira, with a completion period of 3 years. Our correspondent Ibrahim Adra reports.
It's the longest Federal Executive Council meeting in recent time. For about 6 hours, the President and his cabinet members were holed up in the council chambers discussing several issues, at the end of which approvals were given for numerous projects across the country. The ministers emerged from the meeting armed with approvals in the power, road, transportation and education sectors. The first set of assurances are for infrastructure.
The road projects were the Abuja, Kaduna, Zaria and Zaria Kanu. Council also approved that, 155.7 billion. And the Efire, Araromi, Ayela, again to connect Ondo and Ogun states. Council approved that at the cost of 14.4 billion. And finally, the Enugu-Onitsha Highway, the Amansia section.
There is also good news for Abuja residents.
Contract upward review in respect of the inner southern expressway from the outer southern expressway. For those of you who know it, that's the road that is popularly known as Goodluck Jonathan Expressway.
The council is also set to improve the standard of education in 9 universities out of the 37 penciled down.
Council approved the award of provision of independent power plants to 9 universities as the first phase of a pilot program to cover 37 universities.
There are also efforts to boost water supply for domestic and irrigation purposes in Enugu, Kaduna and Delta states.
Adada Dam in Igbo Etiti LGA local government area of Enugu State. This project is aimed to provide water to the university town of Nsukka.
The Nigerian Port Authority is to purchase some vessels to aid its operations.
We had 2 vessels called pilot cutters to escort vessels into the seaports. Prior to this time, they were hiring. Now we have approval for MPA to buy theirs, and the contract was awarded at the cost of 1.9 billion naira.
Other projects approved are purchase of textbooks for primary schools at the cost of 6.9 billion naira, completion of the abandoned Nnamdi Azikiwe Mausoleum in Onitsha, and the completion of the Police Service Commission headquarters in Abuja, amongst others. The Federal Executive Council meeting will continue tomorrow in what could be likened to closing the books for the year. From the presidential villa in Abuja, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, our community report tonight looks at the plight of residents of Ugweke in Abia State who are seeking provision of basic amenities for their community. That's after the break. Please join us again.